Does the today in Psalm 95 suggest the Sabbath will be abandoned?
Mike Colburn suggested that in studying the passages of Hebrews 3 and 4, that we look at the roots in the Septuagint, where this passage is deriving from. He believes that it is an exposition on that passage. I responded by saying that it is using the passage as a basis for describing a concept, but it is not precisely an exposition. Let's take a look at it. As we see here, the dark print, today, if you hear his voice, harden not your hearts as in the provocation, in the day of temptation in the wilderness, when your fathers tempted me, proved me, and saw my works 40 years. Wherefore I was grieved with that generation and said, they do always err in their heart, and they have not known my ways. So I swear in my wrath, they shall not enter into my rest. And it repeats again. Today, if you hear his voice, harden not your hearts, as in the provocation. Let's also look at 4 and see what else is there. As I have sworn in my wrath, if they shall enter into my rest. And then parenthetically, he says, although the works were finished from the foundation of the world, for he spake in a certain place of the seventh day on this wise, and God did rest the seventh day from all his works, which is from Genesis 2:3. And in that place again, so this is it. Verse 4 is an aside from his discussion here, because it goes, and in that place again. In other words, he's going back to the original passage. If they shall enter my rest. And then he keeps on going and repeats it again. Today, after so long a time, as it is said, today, if ye will hear his voice, harden not your hearts. For if Jesus, which is actually Joshua, as you can see there when we highlight it, Yehashua, the Greek version is Jesus. For if Joshua had given them rest, then would he not afterwards have spoken of another day? So the contrast in both chapter 3 and 4 is between the day of provocation, when they did not hear his voice, and today. There is another opportunity to hear his voice so that we can enter into his rest. Now let's go back and take a look at the passage in Psalm chapter 95 and see if we're going to do a full exposition. We'll see if it precludes the seventh-day Sabbath. O come, let us sing unto the Lord. Let us make a joyful noise to the rock of our salvation. Let us come before his presence with thanksgiving and make a joyful noise unto him with psalms. For the Lord is a great God, a great King above all gods. In his hand are the deep places of the earth. The strength of the hills is his also. The sea is his, and he made it, and his hands formed the dry land. O come, let us worship and bow down. Let us kneel before the Lord our Maker. Now, that whole prelude there, a call to worship. When did David in the Psalms worship before the Lord with the whole congregation? On the Sabbath. The Sabbath was the day to acknowledge the one who created us and who rested and was refreshed, according to Exodus 31, who blessed and sanctified the seventh day. That day, that reminder within the week, calls us back to worship of the true God, regardless of what we do during the week in our work and our sustenance of our families. And then we go on. For he is our God, and we are the people of his pasture and the sheep of his hand. Today, if you will hear his voice, harden not your hearts as in the provocation, as in the day of temptation in the wilderness, when your fathers tempted me, proved me, and saw my works. 40 years long was I grieved with this generation, said, is a people that do err in their hearts, and they have not known my ways, unto whom I swear in my wrath that they should not enter into my rest. So the passage is not discussing whether or not one is to keep the Sabbath. The Sabbath is a given. It's talking about entering by faith. So what was it about Psalm 95 or Hebrews 3 and 4 that said to the Hebrew people, you can just abandon the Sabbath. It has no more value to you. I didn't say anything in the Psalms. And the folks who were the Hebrews that we know of, there were the Nazarenes. Paul was said to be the ringleader of the Nazarenes, so he would have associated with them. The Nazarenes were known to be Sabbath keepers when they left Jerusalem in 66 AD, keeping the words of Jesus to the letter, praying that their flight not be in winter or on the Sabbath day. They were Sabbath keepers. We know the Minim, which is a group that the Jews referred to them by that title. They were attenders of the synagogue, but they believed in Christ as the Messiah, and they were both Jews and Gentiles. They kept the Sabbath. They believed that the Ten Commandments were valid for all people, not all the laws of Moses, but the Ten Commandments were. And then the third group is the church in Syria. The church in Syria, which had the translation of the Peshitta that we have quoted many times, says, "It is therefore the duty of the people of God to keep the Sabbath." And that is also how you can translate the Greek. It is therefore, it therefore remains for the people of God to keep the Sabbath. It's all unique. So none of them saw it as an indication that the Sabbath should be done away. And really, is that not an odd idea for those that don't like the Sabbath, who think the Sabbath is something to be avoided, that the Sabbath is the symbol of their religious, their faith relationship with God? Why would you use something that you think of as bad, obnoxious, burdensome, and use it as a symbol of trust in Christ? The Sabbath, in its best sense, helps us to understand what it is to trust in God. We let things go because we trust Him. And we get that weekly reminder of our trust in Him, but also reminder of who He is. He is our Creator. And as we noted in the worship service at our church this past week, Jesus rested from the finished work of His redemption on the Sabbath. It was a quiet day. Hardly anything mentioned about it. It does mention the ladies went, and they kept the commandment and went home and rested. The thief on the cross, even, he also died because they hurried his death along by breaking his legs. But he died and he rested with Jesus on the Sabbath. So, in a dual sense, the Sabbath is full of meaning for the Christian. Somebody asked me about that and said, well, but Christians keep Sunday. And I said, yeah, there's a whole story to that. That'll be another story. We'll pick that up on another occasion. Take care. Thanks for dropping by.